Hi, David. As you know, I've known you for a long time, and I've seen your work. And you know my work. And for some reason down the line, it became obvious we were simpatico in many ways in terms of how we operate, I think. And I always, so a lot of the questions and comments I have directed towards you, they're very similar for me. I mean, there's questions I would ask myself. I'm a sculptor, as you know, but I also paint. And the process is, of course, the creative process is the same, but it's slightly different logistically wise. I mean, painting is such an immediate experience from my viewpoint. Sculptures takes a little more labor and you walk around in circles a lot. But I always wonder, David, when you approach a new work, how do you start? Do you approach the canvas raw with nothing, just go at it, or do you do sketches, preliminary sketches with an idea what the painting will be about? So how do you start, David?
Thank you for the question. I'm David Wiggins, and you will know that. The people that might be watching will know that. I used to live on the island for about 10 years. I was very friendly with Billy and his buddy there, Mr. Flanders, the great poet from Nantucket. Anyway, I'm an abstract expressionist. That if people know what that means, Billy does, they don't need any further explanation. But for those who don't, all of his questions were rather redundant because I don't have any idea of what I'm doing and what I'm painting. It all comes to me in the process as a simple answer. I'm an expressionist, abstract expressionist, but I find that people are not as literate about today, about the language of abstract expressionism or any kind of abstraction for that matter. So this current show will be about painting as an abstract expressionist, but trying to bring imagery into my work. I paint freely without any clear idea of what I am doing, but I let the painting, as far as the image, which you'll see images in these, but they are never planned. They come to me. Does that answer your question, Bill?
Yeah, it's a real good answer. It's a good start anyway, too. Speaking of the imagery, why are you bringing imagery into your work?
Because I don't find people are able to look at paint. I love them and other artists love them. Most of the people that like my work are other artists. Last 3 or 4 years, I'm out here in no man's land, but I still sell paintings and almost all of them are old friends or other artists. They get it. I don't want to say anything pejorative here, but the young people want cartoons. They want slick. They want cartoonists. They want to get a little, there again, I don't want to talk about negativity, but no, I'm being pushed into it. I want to sell and I want people to enjoy my work. It's also it's interesting. It's pushing my boundaries out there because I don't know how to paint landscapes and people. I never went to any school. I was a folk artist on the island. People know that. I worked in an intentional, primitive way with Paulson. I brought primitive and outsider art to that island long before anybody even knew the name of it.
Yeah, I remember when you were working with Kevin. Is the imagery in your new work meant to convey a particular meaning? Or is it just like abstraction is meant to elicit a personal response from the viewer?
That's good.
Basically, what are these paintings about?
Good question. That's a question. I'm not sure I can answer it honestly. That's a very good question. I still have to tell you honestly that they're not really about anything except for expression. I can later on say that my mind was passing through the experience of when I lived in Greece. A lot of them have Greek overtones. So they do have references to my experience in life. But there again, they don't come up from drawings or a specific image idea. No, the answer is still, I'm still not connected with a preconceived image. If somebody looks at them and said that's a Greek ruin or that's a forest or whatever, that became that. You know, the paint made it that. I'm not the only one who works this way. I mean, there's other people who do it that I know, but no, I don't have a understanding of what the painting is going to be about. It comes to me at the end.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's very typical of how I work. Of course, it's all about being in the moment, in the process. For me, as I know for you, it's all about the process. I mean, both understand that the finished product is just sort of, at least is how I look at it, a moment that we stopped in the continual process. As you know, as a painter or even as a sculptor, I could do one work for my whole life. It could just keep going and going. So a finished product is only stopping the process for a moment and going on to something else.
Totally agree. Yes.
Yeah, no, I figured that is, that's how you feel about it too. The new work I'm looking at, I was wondering about your palette, being just sort of technical for a moment. Are you predetermining your palette, or are you just grabbing and going at it?
Grabbing and going at it, brother.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, the new work I'm looking at sort of has a dark undertone, not imagery wise or meaning wise, but physically in the palette.
Yep, I'm very influenced.
What is that about? How did that come up? How did that come up?
I think it's a little nervous for me because it's an advanced, much of a more advanced aesthetic. Anybody who works in the dark, in all forms of dark, whether it's dark poetry or dark painting or dark drama, it's an advanced palette, you might say, and it's more difficult to sell, more difficult to get people interested because they're scared of it. But the great painters are dark. Pollock was dark, spiritually dark, but beautifully dark. I mean, dark doesn't mean dead. Dark means a form of spirituality. The dark and the light mix back together and go. It's a seeking. For example, the Impressionists have no darkness in it. That's right, because there's no contrast. It's all, what it is. It's all what it is. That's not like Ryder, for example. There's a current show going on with Ryder that I've advised you and anybody else who hears this to go to New Bedford to see the work of Albert Pinkham Ryder. He's a New Englander. He's from New Bedford. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. And he's a very dark, expressionistic person. He's one of my favorite artists of all time. I also like Blake Walk a lot. I'm hacking back to pre-modernism in my interests. I don't look at modern art much anymore. I painted myself to the end. I was a very good abstract expressionist. Everybody said I was. That was my medium. But I painted myself into a corner. I don't believe Pollock would be painting the way he did at the end if he was alive today.
Well, I think that's the mark of a true artist, because I know many artists that they get into a rhythm with their style or their palette or whatever, and they just stay with it. And for many, many years. And that, to me, that's not pushing the envelope. That's not exploring new worlds. I'm constantly fighting in my shop to make something totally different from what I usually make, just for that reason.
Right.
Especially in these new paintings, David, that looks exactly like what you're doing. You're just pushing it, because by pushing it, that's where the real creativity is.
That's what I need to do as an artist. I don't know whether I'm going to find any interest on Nantucket or not. Last time I was down there, I walked around and looked at all the other galleries, the ones that are selling paintings, and I got a little depressed. That's what, sells out there. It's not at all what I'm doing, but I'm going to go for it. And John Sylvia has given me a chance. We go way back. I knew his father. And he has confidence in my work, and he's given me the showing, and that's how I'm having this show. It's not through any of the commercial galleries. It's from an old friend that's given me this chance.
John's a good man. I know John very well. He's got a great eye and he's very committed. I'm really glad you're with John.
Thank you.
I hope a lot of young people are starting to get excited about contemporary art. And many of the young people who are new to abstraction need an introduction to our world. So many times people will see one of my sculptures, which are pure. The ones I love the most are purely abstract. They don't refer, they're not referential to anything, that we know. And there are a lot of people always say, oh, that looks like something that they know. And that's not the way to look at it. I think a lot of young people need an introduction to the world of abstraction. It's not supposed to refer you to something that you know or an image that you know. What would you say to people how to appreciate your work?
Good. These are good questions. These are really good. These are the questions that should be asked. I don't know.
I agree because
I don't know what they're teaching in art school anymore. But when I grew up in the 40s and 50s, and the action painters were just coming around, I first saw them when I was about 12 years old, and I was immediately. Nobody had to tell me I just immediately got what they were about, the same way as I immediately got jazz the first time I heard it. I mean, in a way, you don't need an introduction, but the ones who get it, get it. It's like poetry. Artists, the kind of artists that I like are really poets. It's about expression, about atmosphere, about feeling. It might be about cows in the field. That's what I'm saying. I think you and I disagree a little bit here, but there's a parting of ways a little bit. To me, it's not about abstract or representative. I wrote that on my wall of my studio over there. Abstract, figurative, these are not my terms. I mean, those are your terms. Those are the audience terms or the critics' terms. I work to what comes to me, from an inner sense. And it may have reference to the world and it may not.
Of course. Well, it's funny because I also
you're a pure
much of my work, some of my work is not purely abstract. I've done these giant sort of expressionistic flowers. So which I love because that's what they are, and it's what they are, but they have a sense of expression because they're steel,
But you like I like Pollock, you like David. These are two of the great artists of our time. I'm older than you are, but I predate you. I predate the 60s, and all of what happened in the 60s, which was anti-art as far as I'm concerned. But your influences are very similar to mine. I know you like David Smith so much, and he's one of my favorite people too. And Riopelle and all of the great painters of the 40s and 50s. We both loved them. But I think if they were alive today, they'd be agreeing with me that you got to move on. Pollock was looking for me, and Greenberg didn't like it because he had given him a place in the world, in the art world, in the psychological world of understanding of what Pollock was about. And when Pollock wanted to do figures again, he was, it didn't fit with what the critics were saying about who he was. So, they said he lost his way. I don't think he lost his way. The critics create a narrative around artists. And then and it often destroys the artist. That's why, in a way, I feel very fortunate that I haven't gotten really discovered. When I was a boy at school, neither one of us, I think, went to any art school. I had no connection with any art schools at all. My parents encouraged me. I forgot, I lost my train of thought.
Hey, David.
What?
I've often asked this question.
Yeah.
It's a really good question. How do you know when a work is finished? Can you speak about this?
When it's finished?
Yeah.
How do I know what?
How do you know when one of your pieces is done?
I get a certain feel. I don't. Okay. I really don't. I get to a stage, like Pollock said, I get an acquainted stage where I take the brush off the thing, stand back and look at it, and I often don't like it. But I know enough because I'm very self-critical. People think when I paint that like that so freely that there's no process involved. They just don't know. There's tremendous process involved. I often don't like what I do. And I said, don't screw it up now, David. Go home and go to bed. So I go home to my nice little home, and my wife's been in bed a long time ago. We're talking about 2 a.m. And I get up next day, drink coffee, and go back to my studio and look at the painting. I like it. That's when I know that I like it.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I know it's done. I don't know during the process. I've ruined paintings. I've gone to places where were really good and destroyed it. I've done that over and over because you try to go further. And the strength in my paintings, I hope you see when you actually see them in the flesh, is their automation, their automatic part of it, the old abstract expressionist man. That's the strength in it. When I get an image going, from that process, and then I want to go into it and make it so you're going to like it. That's when I screw them up.
Well, there's a great line that Picasso said, I think I mentioned it to you, that when there's something in your painting that you really like and are really attached to, get rid of it.
That's right. That's right.
Invariably, people who don't know what this process is about will go, what do you mean, get rid? Well, invariably, it's holding you back. And that's what I know that you are very, very involved with, is not being held back and being adventurous and cutting new ground.
Fair to myself, honest with myself, authentic with myself.
Exactly. I mean, can you take us on a quick journey from setting up a blank canvas and going through it?
I don't understand the question, Bill.
Can you take me on a quick journey from start to finish on a painting, perhaps?
That would be very hard, but I'll try.
Yeah.
I work with different mediums. A lot of these paintings I use, like I paint on paper, cut it out, and reestablish it on the canvas. It's all about process with me. I've been using tar lately in a lot of my paintings. It's a mix. I mean, I think it might be like how a sculptor works. I mean, I'm working with things, putting things here and there, composing. I never think about composition. I've always felt I had a very strong sense of composition. So I never even worry about whether the thing is being composed properly or not. I just work with all of these things. I use a lot of molten paint, like thinned out paint, not like out of the tube where it's thick. I use paint that's thin. I often work on masonite rather than canvases because I don't like the bounce of canvas. I don't, you have to stretch it afterwards and all that. I work on masonite. I can work on big panels that way, and then, worry about framing them and giving them a support afterwards. Almost never do I start off on a white canvas. I start by just playing like a kid. Janelle's boy was here and he was on the floor painting, and I was looking at him painting, and he paints like I do. He just starts messing around with stuff, and then things start to happen.
That is very, very familiar with me, David. When I'm working on a sculpture, I go out to my pile of steel, and I'll just start picking out some pieces that seem to have the same language for me. And in language, I mean same sort of scale or scope or the same kind of feel that they might, work together. So I'll bring them into the shop, and I usually start from the bottom up, like Janelle's son working on the floor with a painting. And I just start putting stuff together. And usually I don't like it right away. So, then you try something else, and then you try something else, and all of a sudden, oh, that's okay. I'll keep that and go on from there. It's a very similar process as a sculptor. People ask me a lot about inspiration and, oh, you're very talented, how do you get your inspiration? And and I know this is probably very true with you, David. I'd like to hear what you say also. It's got nothing to do with inspiration. There isn't, it's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with perseverance. My feeling is you go to the shop, you start working, you work, and you persevere, and you'll find some great lows and you want to give up. So then you disappear, but you always come back. And the key is perseverance, because if you stay with it and go up and down and have despair and have highlights and exhilaration at times, and then you get to be despairing and you just stay with it, that perseverance is what fuels the process, and something always happens in my experience. If I stay in the shop and stay working on a piece and focus in on it, something will happen. And I think that's the key. What do you think?
I think I could not have said it better, Billy. It's you and I are so much on the same, playing in the same key that I don't even really have any comment on it. I would say exactly the same. People say about talent, it's like that. Other artists say I've got talent. I don't really think that way myself. I think that, something comes out. I think like I'm more like a medium. And then there's these poor people that come along and say, well, I have no talent. I said, who in hell told you that? That's like saying,
David, yeah.
I said, it's like saying, I don't know how to make love, or I don't know how to dance. Who in hell ever told you that? Everybody knows how to make love and everybody knows how to dance. It's built into us. The artistic process is in every human being. But we've got these societies, these systems that shut people down. And even the art critics themselves shut people down. This is a good painting. This is a bad painting. Bullshit. You don't tell artists that. I'll tell you that right now.
Excellent, my friend. Excellent.
Don't get me going there. They'll cut us off the air.
I want you to keep going. There's nothing else I could say. Let me tell you, David.
Somebody told this kid in the second grade, that his sister could dance. He can't dance. You know what I mean? You call that teaching somebody something? Is that teaching the way you understand it? This kid's talented. This kid's not talented. That's not the world I understand. And that's not art as I understand it. Some of the greatest artists that I know are very untalented people. Pollock was not a very talented artist. He couldn't draw well. He didn't understand easel painting. And look he's probably the greatest American contemporary artist. He broke through. You know what de Kooning said when he came into the first show with Jackson Pollock in the Parsons Gallery, Betty Parsons Gallery? They were all standing around, all guys like you and I, Billy, looking this way and looking that way at all these strange paintings. They were all other artists. And de Kooning looked, I think he was next to Klein. He looks over at Klein. And nobody knew what to say. Nobody bought anything. Everybody was standing on one foot and the other because they'd never seen this shit before. And de Kooning says to Franz Klein, he says, yep. He says, Jackson has broken the ice.
Nice. Very nice.
You ever heard that before?
I had never heard that story. And as you know, I love Pollock and I love de Kooning, to be honest. De Kooning's one of my great influences, as is Pollock. So very well. I love that. Well, I don't think I got any more to add to you, David.
No, I'm all set too. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for the help and the friendship, Billy. I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
I'm so glad we had this, man. It's good to see you.
Bye-bye.